This is the Free Zone Communiqué, transmitting from Virginia's unoccupied sector. If you think smart cities, DEI, censorship, government intrusion, bug paste, and other left-wing nonsense are no longer a possibility, think again. We've won one election with slim majorities. Our work to rebuild a free and sane America has just begun.
Because you're a homophobe, you're a xenophobe, you're a misogynist, you're a fascist, you're a Hitler, and therefore this screaming and this yelling and this hatred and this name calling that you see even after it failed for the last 4 years. They just lost an election to a man that they threw every name at and every gimmick they could and every tried to gin up hate, and they lost over, and still this is all they do because this is all they have.
Don't look for a big change.
Because there's
They're
no,
advertising it, but I don't think it's ever going to come.
there has to be a sea change. What has to happen is,
No, I don't mean in America. I mean among the people. They did this false self-searching after the election.
yes, I know
Oh, no,
the
we have
autopsies.
our ills, and we're going to fix all our ills. But I'll
No,
give you
they
an
won't.
example of. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, they won't because they can't. You'll notice even in the brightest, happiest version of wokeism, John Lennon's Imagine. All he can do is destroy. Imagine there's no countries. Imagine no religions. Okay, now I'm imagining it. What are you going to put in its place? What is your plan? And they have no plan after they've destroyed what is. They don't have wokeism, which is the dominant ideology in the Democrat Party today, cannot build. It can only destroy.
Well, I got to tell you, I have so many thoughts right now about taking a deep dive into these issues. But I want to talk about your new book.
Yes, sir. Me too.
So I will put a placeholder in this. If we ever have another opportunity to sit down, we can go deeper into the narcissism and deeper into um, the self-destruction, along with the national destruction. These people don't realize they're immolating themselves.
Indeed. And
With their
and
ideas.
and by the way, just to go back to my original unified theory, by rejecting fact and reason, they are literally morally and intellectually stunted, retarded, at the level of the 5-year-old child. And this is because this is not something that they actually take pride in that. In fact, if you go back, they called themselves the children of the 60s.
Yeah,
And who was their enemy? The man, the
the man.
grown up, the man. And
Don't trust anybody over 30, right?
don't trust anyone over 30. People don't remember this, but the subtitle of Hillary Clinton's famous book, It Takes a Village, is "And Other Lessons We Can Learn from Children."
Yeah.
It's children who can teach us because we've lost our way as adults,
It's
as
like
thinking
the
people.
book you mentioned in your book.
Uh,
Uh, Everything I learned in life
all I ever need
learned
to
in
know, I learned
kindergarten.
in kindergarten.
Yeah.
Now, you and I would find that. I mean, that's an ode to ignorance.
Yeah.
But the key to it is he doesn't say everything I know I learned in kindergarten. Obviously, the Democrat, Nancy Pelosi, Chuck Schumer, they've learned a lot of things since kindergarten. They don't need to know anything they learned because they will not incorporate it into their thinking because thinking has been outlawed on the political left.
Yeah.
You
That is
don't
right
need
out
to
of
know.
1984.
Indeed.
I mean, thinking has been outlawed.
Indeed. And we can talk about, I mean, we can go a little longer today. Let me so long as my voice holds up. Um,
You sound
but
good.
like in 1984, everything that the Democrat says, the modern liberal says, is exactly the opposite of the truth. And they have this newspeak where what they do is they insert a modifier before a very important idea, before an important word. And that modifier changes the meaning of that word 180 degrees. For example, Matt, as a grown up, it is important that we be correct. We need to be correct in our thinking, in our calculations, in our understanding of things. We need to be correct. But because the Democrat is never correct, he inserts the word politically before the word correct, and it spins the meaning of correct 180 degrees.
Right.
Right? Another example is justice. We know that to have a good and great society, we need to seek justice.
And there is only
But
one justice.
but indiscriminateness is the opposite of justice. I
Right.
mean, literally, you in the courtroom, in the jurisprudence system, you gather the facts, you analyze them, and then you deliberate over them. So it's the very opposite of indiscriminateness. And so, because the Democrat, the modern liberal, the woke, seek the opposite of justice, they seek indiscriminateness, they insert the modifier social
Social,
before the word justice,
or
and it
racial, or
changes it
sexual. Yeah.
180 degrees.
Yeah. Yeah. We the pendulum has been swinging the wrong way for a very long time. I feel we've gotten a hold of the pendulum. And along with this first part of this conversation and the next 2 years, we have to push that pendulum back as hard as we can.
Yeah, I mean, I
We can't
just,
swing back again.
I mean, it's a little bit dangerous in my view to think of it as a pendulum, because the idea is then that it will inevitably go back the other way, and there is no promise that it will go back the other way. I mean, maybe after a great deal of destruction and sorrow and pain, okay, eventually Germany went back to, a more semi-moderate idea,
Yeah, when it was normal.
eventually.
Yeah.
But how much so there's no guarantee. In fact, quite the opposite. I think if we had not grabbed hold of the pendulum, and if we do not pull with all our might, we might well have seen the end of Western civilization, partly by the hands of the Democrats, who do truly hate America. Tell
Yeah.
us they hate America. They teach our children to hate America. Why would they want America to survive if they hate us so much?
I'll
But
give you one. Oh, I'm sorry.
if not at the hands of the woke, then at the hands of their allies, the Islamicists and the Marxists. A comparison I made, there's an expression, I believe it was coined by a gentleman named Gad Sad, who has a book called The Parasitic Mind. He's very well known at this point. He calls it the woke mind virus.
Yeah.
And this woke mind virus is very similar to AIDS. Right? AIDS didn't kill you. AIDS was rather benign. What it did was it so confused the immune system as to what is good and what is deadly that when a deadly virus entered, it didn't put up its defenses. Well,
Right.
wokeism blinds society to good and evil. And so they won't put up the defenses against Islam, for example. And it might be Islam that kills us and not wokeism. It's, or it might be Marxism that kills us, or it might be the woke. But wokeism is very much like the AIDS virus in that it is indiscriminate between benign and deadly.
Yeah. I've got to move on to your book.
Okay.
I will preface it this way. Um, Most people who meet me and find out I'm conservative first assume I'm a Christian,
Mm-hmm.
and that's not the case. And people who meet me, I was at a part of a group of non-religious people one time. Everyone who saw me walked into the room and found out that I'm a religious. I have no faith in religion. Assumed I'm a liberal. I am a conservative atheist. We're very lonely. I think there's 7 of us.
Yeah.
We have meetings. We talk about sports.
Yeah.
But I just wanted to preface that because there's a lot in this book that I do agree with. Um,
Mm-hmm.
but And I'll get into it specifically as we move along. Um, maybe my concern is the brush itself, but the book's
Uh-huh.
called Magic Soup, Typing Monkeys, Horny Aliens from Outer Space, the patently absurd, wholly unsubstantiated, and extravagantly failed atheist origin myth. And my first question is, why are you so shy? Why don't you just tell me what you think of it? You know what I mean?
Yeah, look, I wrote a book on a topic that has been discussed for 10,000 years. I wrote a book on a topic that if you go to the library or you go to the bookstore today, you will find that 20 more books on that very topic were published just this month. So, how was I going to make my book stand out as different? And by the way, why did I write it in the first place if there's all these things and all these other books? And the reason is, and by the way, I was an atheist for the longest time. And I did not come to a belief in God through upbringing. Obviously, if I was an atheist for all those years, nor is my belief based on faith. My belief is based on the scientific reality and the options that are out there. See, that was kind of murky, but let me explain. The vast majority of atheists today, and this is the most atheistic society generations in Western civilization's history. And I don't think it's a coincidence that it's also the most suicidal, it's the most homicidal, it's the most depressed, it's the most lonely. I believe these things are interrelated. Uh, but
Stand by. More to follow.
I've always said that I could write full time and I'd be willing to do it for free. Well, I'm full time and I'm doing it for free. It doesn't feel as purely good as I thought it might. It is a labor of love, I promise. But I wouldn't mind picking up a few shekels and yen, a little beer money. So, keep me motivated. There are two ways you can support the P4B directly. One is by visiting Po River, where you can find P4B gear and all kinds of other cool stuff. The other way is by smashing the button provided just above the final segment. To be sure, not everyone can afford to support a podcast. If you would be kind enough to hit the share button whenever you visit, that too would go a long way in supporting my work. But really, you know, beer money.
Surely you can't be serious.
I am serious. And don't call me Shirley.
And you were defining atheism and the fact that this is the most atheistic generation, and I have to agree. I have to agree with that.
Oh, yeah, and that's generally agreed on by both sides, by the Pew surveys and the Gallup surveys, and uh, the thing is that the vast majority of today's atheists, and this is a quote I'm going to borrow from a guy named David Gellertner, who's a Yale University professor, and he's speaking about his atheistic students, and he said they don't even rise to the level of atheist. They've simply never given God's existence any thought at all. And the reason that they haven't given God's existence any thought at all is because they've been told by people masquerading, speaking under the banner of science, that God is not a scientific belief. And therefore, there's no reason to even think about it because we all want to be scientific. We certainly don't want to be those evil, superstitious people who caused things like the Inquisition and the Crusades, and so they don't even give God's existence any thought at all because they are told that God is not scientific. Well, that's false on two grounds. One, it is only even true if you use the limited definition of science imposed by these atheists of materialism. That's correct. God, it does not fit a materialistic scientific possibility.
Let's define that term. A lot of people see materialism as greedy or the wanting of things, but there's a scientific
Right,
definition of
and
that.
that
If you could take us
that
through that.
and what that means is that no matter what the evidence may or may not show, the answer has to be made of the materials and forces found in our universe within the four dimensions of height, width, depth, and time in which we can perceive. Since God is by definition beyond the materials of our universe and is by definition outside of our ability to perceive in those dimensions, then God is not materialistic. Therefore, you don't have to think about it. God is not refuted by science. God is disqualified by science if you use the definition of science as materialism. The
Okay.
problem here, right? The
I do
problem here,
believe. Go ahead.
yeah, the problem here is that the only alternative to God also fails the materialist definition of science. There's only two possibilities. It's really very simple. There's only two possibilities. Given that the universe is here, it was either somehow just always here, or it wasn't always here, right? It was or it wasn't. Those are the only two possibilities. Well, if it was always here, then the materialist must reject it because it's outside of the dimension of time. It does not fit their definition of science because it's outside the dimension of time. If it wasn't always here, the materialists have to reject it because it must have come from materials and forces outside of our universe.
Well,
So, yes,
it's a
yeah,
minor point. It's a minor point, I
go
guess.
ahead.
That's one of the first places I deviate from when people demand I follow the science and they call time a thing or a dimension. Time doesn't exist. We made it
Okay,
up. It's
space
a
time.
concept. It's something we use to chronicle the actions we do take and the things we do witness. But time didn't cause it. Time doesn't change it. That is just a
I
concept
don't
we
quite
created.
understand because does height change it? Does width change it? Does height, width, depth, and time? I mean, those are uh, how we do measure, as you say, that's how we measure our experience. That's how we measure our experiments, and that's how we do our science is
Right.
height, width, depth, and time. Even if it's just made up, even if it's not a thing, that is what we employ to prove something true or not true. Are those dimensions? Well, the universe is either outside the dimension of time or it came from outside the materials of our universe. So, I mean, what I want to ask, and this is what I wrote my book about, is I'm going to stipulate that I am everything that Richard Dawkins and Sam Harris and the other militant atheists say that I am. I'm stupid. I'm brainwashed. I believe in this ridiculous thing that they. Enough about me. Dawkins, Richard Dawkins, Sam Harris, Steven Pinker. Tell me, what is it that you believe? What is it that you believe? How did the universe come into existence? And they have, not only do they have no answer, they can have no answer. It's not that they haven't yet come up with a theory. It is that there's no theory that satisfies the limited definition of science that they've imposed in order to disqualify God. And
I'll
so,
I'll
yeah.
let you know a little secret.
Uh-huh.
Dawkins is a dick.
I'll let you in. I'll let you in on a little secret. That's not a secret.
That's not, yeah. He his thinking is always skewed. He is emotionalist. He is politically oriented. He takes every argument and turns it into Republican versus Democrat. Donald
Indeed,
Trump versus everybody else.
indeed, and that's why he, like Richard Lewontin, like Sam Harris, like Steven Pinker, they subserviate science to their political ideology. And
Hmm.
atheism is utterly essential to the woke ideology, because only without God can you be indiscriminate. And so these are the people I call militant atheists. And by the way, I did not coin that phrase.
No, I
That
know.
was that was how the Wall Street Journal described this new breed of professional atheists like Dawkins and Harris, who are not scientists. They use the title of science to advance their ideological aims.
Right.
If I think there'd be a lot fewer atheists if Dawkins said, "We don't have a clue how the universe, it is, everything that we know says it's impossible.
Well, you just said
We don't
something
have
a second ago. Um, Being an atheist is a way to avoid God and avoid what is right.
Well,
Now,
here's the thing. Here's the thing, if I may. Every supremacist movement, and
Yeah.
wokeism is a supremacist movement, has made the same promises. They have said, I should say every, successive ones have made the same promise. If you will reject God and embrace us as gods, we will manufacture a brand new, never before seen kind of human being who will finally create the perfect world. And so the communism said, if you reject God and you embrace us as gods, we will engineer the never before seen type of human being who is wholly without self-interest. He will work to the best of his abilities, asking almost nothing for himself, and that will create a worker's paradise.
Right.
Right?
Whenever
The Nazis said,
whenever somebody sets, excuse me.
You and me, we sound like sick old men.
I'm telling you, whenever somebody sets themselves above all others, that to me is a nonsensical version of what you're saying. I'm now God.
Well, that's what they want to be.
Right
So
down to I'm with the government. I'm here to help. I don't believe that one either.
And that's what So the communists said, trust the state, we will be your God. The Nazis said, if you will disbelieve in God and believe in Hitler and Nazi as gods, we will manufacture the Ubermensch, the perfect human being who will decide emotion and do only what's best scientifically to create. They will be, and what the woke say, what Richard Dawkins says, is if you ignore science, I'm sorry, if you will deny the existence of God and make us, the science gods, we will engineer a never before seen perfect human being who will then usher in paradise. That perfect human being is a person without hate. They are going to engineer hate out of the human being. And one of the ways you do that is by eliminating God, country, go back to John Lennon's song. They are going to create a universe, a human being, wholly devoid of hate. The problem, Matt, is that you cannot remove hate and keep love.
Right.
Love
You
and
just
hate
took the
is
words right out of my mouth. Yeah.
Love and hate is a single concept that cannot be separated and still have any meaning. You can't love good unless you hate evil. You can't love justice unless you hate injustice. And so what you end up with when you remove hate, and by the way, look at the end zone of the Super Bowl on Sunday or next Sunday when you're doing your special show. See how I plugged you?
That's right.
And in the end zone, you will see it says, stop hate. And that's the problem, is that the woke don't hate rapists. The woke don't hate terrorists. The woke don't hate drug runners. The woke don't hate because they stopped hate.
Yeah. I'm of a belief, and I've always lived by this. It's kind of a live and let live kind of attitude, I guess. If you believe that you are an upstanding citizen, a moral person, because you believe in God and that God works in your life, then it's true. It can't be any other way.
Well,
I believe I get one shot. I've got to do it right. I can't waste my life uh, doing things that I wouldn't do in front of my mother, for example. Um, because
indeed, but
because
let's.
it cheapens the whole thing. I get one shot and that's it.
But
That's my life.
it's also not only is it good and to be good and moral, it's fun. It's
Yeah.
fun to have rules and laws and things that are bigger and more important than you. And that's one of the problems with wokeism and the narcissistic personality disorder is that it reduces everything to self and moment. And again, go back to John Lennon's musical version of wokeism. And one of the great payoffs of giving up morality is all the people living for today.
Yeah.
And when you're living for today, you learn nothing from the past and you have no interest in the future. It's a carpe diem ideology and because happiness, and this is my next book on happiness, is based on the intertemporal, the long lasting, love rather than just sex. Uh, the woke have no happiness because they cannot have happiness because happiness is intertemporal.
Yep. Among the many links that are going to be below will be this book. I do recommend it.
Yeah, and let me go back to this. I am not arguing in this book for any religion, although I am, but for scientific reasons. And I'm not even arguing that. I just want to reintroduce the reality that science is not on the side of atheism.
And it's
Science
not a
is actually
panacea. It's not a
right.
panacea.
Science is not on the side of atheism. You've got two equally extra scientific ideas, right? Either the universe, let's say we believe in the Big Bang, which is what science suggests that we had a beginning.
Right.
Either it came about and was designed intentionally, or it came about by luck and organized itself by luck.
Yeah,
Luck,
there's certainly logical room for someone to say that somebody had their finger on the scale. You know,
yep.
If the whole process was set in motion to bring about what we have today, and not just here on Earth, it's a big old universe out there. There's no way, because like you said, you can't find the alternative. There's
that's
no
the problem,
way
but
you can state unequivocally whether you believe in a supreme being or not. If you can't say the thing, then you can't say God ain't the thing.
Well, not only that, but look, science requires more. I mean, understanding the scientific method requires more than the mere out-of-hand rejection of a theory you don't care for. It requires that an alternative theory that better explains the various questions posed by the reality of our existence. Right? So, yes, God is a out of this world, ridiculous concept. What's the alternative? It is not only equally ridiculous and out of this world, but all known science then points to an intelligent creator. For example, how did the universe go from the literal definition of chaos, the instant after the Big Bang, to such utter precision that if one part in 80 million trillion were different, the universe wouldn't exist? Like the force, the gravitational force. If it were just the tiniest bit stronger, the universe would have collapsed on itself. If it was the tiniest bit weaker, the universe would have ripped apart. So, how did the universe go from the literal definition of chaos to as close to the literal definition of perfection as possible.
Can
Well,
I
the
can I
atheists,
can I take a crack at that as a layman?
sure, sure.
The chaos did lead to tremendous violence in the universe. Uh, Planets colliding, entire galaxies colliding. The if you could put that on a level of destruction, it would be unimaginable.
Hmm.
And with each collision, with each interaction, you define things a little bit further. And the wider the universe gets, the further apart these objects become, the more time they have to develop as they would develop. Um,
So,
I
so,
can't, I can't
but your
say
answer
where
is,
life comes from.
well, no, no, but no, no. Even what you're saying there, it's the random interactions of insentient materials. And luck, then random being luck. The idea that what you just described happened through the random interaction of insentient materials was actually calculated by an astrophysicist named Herbert Ross at the California Institute of Technology, and the odds are 1 in 80 million trillion, a number that he describes as so infinitesimal as to be statistically impossible.
What's his name?
But
I think I know this guy. What,
if I'm remembering correctly, I wrote the book, I wrote that section a while ago. But I believe it's Herbert Ross at the California Institute of Technology,
no,
and
he is a religious man. He is a man of
well,
faith.
he is, but nonetheless, the numbers are the numbers. He crunched the numbers, and the odds of the given how many atoms, how many particles, the odds of the random interaction of insentient materials producing the perfect universe that allows for the continuation of the universe and for human life is beyond
Infinitesimal.
astronomical.
Yeah.
That being said, it's also scientifically impossible because I believe it's the second law of thermodynamics, or as I say in the book, the first law of In and Out Burger. Things don't go from chaotic to organized. They go from organized to chaotic unless there is an outside and intelligent influence. All right. If you have the various chaotic ingredients for a double double at In and Out Burger, they don't come together to form the sandwich unless there's an intelligent outside force, or at least the kid who works behind the counter putting it together. Then, when you're not thinking about it, and you're eating it, and it drips. So it violates the second law of thermodynamics that the universe, by luck or not luck,
Well,
it goes against all known science.
I'm gonna we are running pretty long on time, so I'm just going
Okay.
to ask you a couple questions
Yes, sir.
on what you just said. Are terms when you talk to a physicist, terms like luck and you use the term uh, a cell putting itself together like so many Legos,
Uh-huh.
building itself. Father Glennon used to, he would do introductory physical sciences. And the first experiment he would do, he would put hydrogen in a test tube and then put a burning taper in, and you get a little puddle of water.
Hmm.
You know, when we as laymen look at the science and say, oh, the hydrogen and oxygen decided they wanted to be buddies after the fire, it, it's metaphorical. Luck, and because what they
It's
describe as luck in a conference or in a subset of a chapter, a lot of them will go on to explain in tremendous detail what they believe actually happened. And it wasn't lucky, it was the result of reactions.
no, what they are capable of doing is they are able to answer secondary and tertiary questions about science. What they are not able to do is answer any of the big questions, the ones that have to do with origin and design. Yeah, once you have a test tube, and once you have the hydrogen, and once you have a human being, by the way, an intelligent designer testing, doing it, yeah, okay, you now have water. But where did the hydrogen come from? Where did the test tube come from? Where did the scientist come from? Where did the hydrogen come from? They cannot answer. They cannot even begin to answer. And by the way, Dawkins was asked. I believe in my book. I said it was about. I forget if it's the origin of life or the fine tuning of the cosmos. But he said, "Well, they asked him, what is your explanation?" And he said, "Happy accident."
Well, yeah, you have my opinion on Dawkins.
But Dawkins is
yeah,
still
I believe
Dawkins is the
such
go-to
talk is
guy.
that I believe such talk is either metaphorical, or if they don't know what they're talking about, they're just making it up.
They don't know what they're
They're just
talking
putting a
about,
placeholder in
which
there.
is where the thing in my book, the title of my book, Typing Monkeys, is that there is actually, and this is the leading theory as to how the universe fine-tuned itself and how life came to be and how we've got our intelligence, our metaphysical traits. They say, well, if you put enough monkeys in enough rooms with enough typewriters for enough time, eventually they'll type the collective works of William Shakespeare. And that is the leading scientific explanation for a universe that was not intelligently designed.
That's an immediately self-defeating argument. It doesn't allow for the absolute random, the insoluble random. The
Well,
monkeys
it
would
also
have to
doesn't allow
develop
for the
into human
fact.
beings and so on, and all these other things would have to happen before the quote monkey could quote Shakespeare, even one
in,
sentence. You know,
not even one sentence. In
right?
fact, I don't even think you would get a couple of words in a row, because in no time at all, what you'd end up with is smashed typewriters, shredded papers, and blood and feces covering the walls. All right, it's outside of the nature of the ape to sit there and type, and it's outside of nature, the natural laws, for things to go from chaotic to organized, or for life to come from the insentient.
Yeah, I did a lot of research in preparation for this interview because you are the biggest dude I've ever interviewed, and I wanted to research some of your statements um, and attributions. One of the things I didn't connect to, like you do in the book, is cosmic lottery. I know what the term means,
Mhm.
but so far in my reading, I've only associated it with Rabbi Michael Leo Samuel,
Okay.
Marie, and St. Paul, who won a lottery and called it the cosmic lottery that got her there. Wei Hung Wang, a philosopher. So far, I haven't found any physicists that actually say that. But I do understand. I do understand what you're saying, and it does tie into your quote from Richard Lewontin.
Right, and it also ties into the monkeys in rooms with typewriters, the randomness and the luck. But I
Right.
do believe that I originally got the quotation from Stephen Jay Gould, who is not a physicist. He is a paleontologist at Harvard. In fact, he's passed now, but the world's leading paleontologist. And I believe that is I borrowed his phraseology.
I just mentioned Lewontin. You are very mean to poor Mr. Lewontin. I read up on him. By all accounts, he's a perfect gentleman. Students loved him. And something he said, and this was just from a lot of reading. This just jumped off the page at me. He was quoted in Scientific American as saying, "A belief in God may be the earliest indication of man's capacity for higher thought." So I then went back and read the quote that you mentioned, that talks about we cannot allow the divine foot in the door.
Right.
While I will not stand between you and him in terms of a position in the argument, I'm not going to be that arrogant. I will say, if you look at the longer quote, the message it sends to me is I'm not here to disqualify or qualify God. I'm not here. But when I'm experimenting, I don't invite them to the party. I'm
Oh,
experimenting.
I think that that part of the quotation, that's not what he means. I believe he means it to not allow uh, a belief in God, the divine, even a foot in the door across all of civilization. But the quote I actually use in the book, it's from that. It's from that. But I start my book, and I'm going to have to paraphrase because I don't have it in front of me. But he was speaking to a room full of evolutionary biologists and physicists and astrophysicists. And he said, we, talking to them, we take the side of science, despite the patent absurdity of some of its claims. Despite its failure to keep its extravagant promises, despite its, because we have a prior commitment. We have a prior commitment to materialism. All right, materialism, again, is just a euphemism for atheism. And so what he's saying is that we tell the people that this is science, even though we know it to be patently absurd. And we tell them that this is what the science shows, even though it's failed extravagantly in its every test. Because our commitment is not to the truth, our commitment is to atheism. And that to me is the defining thing about the militant atheist, is that their prior commitment, and by the way, you see this in the entertainment industry, their prior commitment isn't to entertainment, it's to advancing the ideological cause. You're seeing this more and more in science and across the board, where their commitment is to wokeism above what their commitment should be.
Yeah.
And so when you have scientists who are claiming the mantle of science and getting people to not even investigate the possibility of intelligent design based on what they themselves know is patently absurd, well, when you have scientists who aren't scientists, they're just propagandists.
No. You are such a good speaker that the questions form in my head and then they evaporate because I'm still listening to you.
Well, but, Matt, I promise we'll do this again. Okay. I mean,
the term militant, that when we talk about militant atheists, I don't like militant atheists any more than I like militant anybody. If you're not talking about being in an actual shooting war, whether you're talking about militant trans fad, militant lesbian, militant anything,
right?
I equate that to the Harley engine. I have buddies, they're bikers, and I like to tease them. And I used to tell Les, I said, do you know what the sound of a Harley? You know what that does for me? That loud roar when you're driving off. It says, look at me, because that's what it's. And
yeah, I feel the same way.
Stand on anything. They're actually pointing at themselves. They're not.
Well, I feel the same way when I hear somebody blasting music, and I know they can't be enjoying blasting music in their car, and I know they can't be enjoying it, but it's all look at me. But again, I believe that they don't want people to believe in God because they want people to believe in them. They want to be the gods, and I know that with the religious people that I hang out with, and by the way, I'm not greatly religious. I'd like to be more, but I don't keep the Sabbath. I don't keep kosher. I don't do those things. And in fact, my book doesn't quote scripture as authority ever. And there's a reason for that. If you don't believe in God, then if I make a call to authority to scripture, it doesn't do any good if you don't believe that's authoritative. So my book is entirely a reasoned argument. There's no faith as in I don't, I disagree with Dawkins' definition of faith, which is belief in something for which there is no evidence. I believe faith is actually belief in something you don't know based on previous performance. So, for example, if I give the keys to my car to my teenager because I have faith in them, it's not because I have no evidence of it. I trust them. I have faith in them because of their previous behavior. Well, I've got faith in God based on the previous behavior of having created the universe, fine-tuned the universe, created life from the insentient, created human beings from the animal, and ultimately culminating in my ability to be somewhat godlike in that we are the only other things in the universe that have the ability to create.
Yeah, you do have qualifiers as such in the book. And what I felt would be a good idea would be to amplify them a little bit. You didn't have 5,000 pages. You didn't set out to write the tome of tomes. So you had to compress your argument. So uh, I can see definitely where that argument grows from. And one thing I can tell the reader is whether you're like me, you're just you don't believe, but it's not a big thing, or you are a believer. This book will generate a lot of conversation.
And I hope some thinking.
Now, I'll leave you with
I,
I'll leave you
and
with
I hope some internal thinking, because that's ultimately all I ask is that you return, not you, the reader, return the possibility of God. Because right now, science has not refuted God's existence. It has disqualified God's existence, and it has done so through a manipulation of the language. And that's all. Just consider God's existence.
yeah. I'll leave you with this thought. Have you ever seen the movie Creator, Peter O'Toole?
No, I don't think so.
It's really dated. It's an 80s movie, but it's Peter O'Toole overacting, so it's got to be good, you know.
If something from the 80s is dated, what are you and I?
Oh, well, we're ancient. We're rocks don't live as long as us. But he's a professor. He's a biologist, I think. Uh, he's philosophical. The writing is excellent. He does a great job with it. And one of his students asks him, "Do you believe in God?" And he said, "Yes, Boris, I definitely do." He said, "I imagine that science is going to climb to the mountaintop and peer over the other side and find out that God was standing there all along."
Right. Well, that's actually a very famous quotation from and by the way, this gentleman was an atheist. I can't believe I can't think of his name. It's embarrassing. But he said when the Big Bang was when I'm sorry, the theory of general relativity was proved on that day in 1919 or 1921, whatever it was. Said for the atheist, the story ends like a bad dream. They have scaled the mountains of ignorance. They have climbed to its highest peak. They are about to come to the and they climb over the final rock. And there's a band of theologians that have been sitting there waiting for millennia. Yeah, everything they know, the Big
Yeah,
Bang. In fact,
I'm
a
not.
lot of atheistic scientists were upset when the Big Bang was proved to be true because if there's a beginning, then there has to be something that created that beginning.
Yeah, and things start that you have to start defining things you didn't have to define before.
Indeed.
That's a lot of work. Well,
It
listen,
is indeed.
Evan, this was awesome.
Well,
And
thank you.
like I said, I could talk to you for the next 17 hours straight if we could maintain our voices.
Yep. Well, I appreciate that. And I appreciate your time, and that was terrific for me as well.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to let you go. Thank you for being with us.
Let me pitch my books. Let me just tell
Oh,
everybody
oh, absolutely.
I've got three books. I know that Matt's going to provide a link. They are all based on my unified theory of liberalism. If you want to understand why your friends, your neighbors, your colleagues side with evil, failure, and wrong, these are the books you need to get. Also, though, please go to my Substack. Uh, Consider being a paid subscriber. And that's, I believe, say it, S is in Sam, AYET .substack.com.
I was actually going to spend some time on your previous article, but We've been at it for an hour and a half already, and I know
Indeed,
you're running
90
out of
minutes.
gas on me.
Yes, sir.
Uh,
Well, I appreciate it.
yeah, stick around. I'm gonna wrap up here for the P4B, and we hope to have Evan back very soon.
Please tell a friend about the Free Zone Communiqué. We live and die with the share and subscribe buttons. Please use affiliate and sponsor buttons to support our work. Thank you very much for joining us today.